Hi, everybody. Steve Cady here with our Teaching Online learning community. And it's April 23rd, 2020, and we're checking in with our regular check-ins. Today's Thursday, and we got the pleasure of Paul being with us, which is always nice. Paul, Jen was giving you a shout out yesterday in our student meeting, our cohort meeting with our DODC cohort. She was talking about, she's at Marathon, as you I don't know if you know that, but she's at Marathon. She's one of our doctoral students. And so she's been finding the sessions to be immensely kind of informative. Like, she's learning all kinds of stuff. There was a guy on Tuesday, we had an emergency department meeting to talk about some of the budget cut stuff. And so I wasn't here. And she was mentioning how there was a lot of talk from the gentleman that has published several books on virtual teaming, and it was just a really great conversation. So she keeps coming back for more and more. So it's good to see Jen. And Teo is here. I'm still getting used to seeing Ford Stiegler because Teo got married and they combined their name. So I'm still getting used to that. It's amazing. I remember when they were dating.
You remember from before when we were.
Yeah, I do. And I can remember, I remember, I don't want to get too personal, but I remember one day we were meeting and then you had to have an important chat and you were out walking in my front yard having an important chat with Leona. So it's great seeing you where you are now. You grow up well, Teo.
Well, thank you.
So why don't we check in, and maybe we start off, Paul, if you want to, if there's anything you'd like to talk about, anything maybe we could be a sounding board for you on, anything like that, you want to give us an update on anything, and I'll make sure I send this out and make a note that this recording has a bit of an update from you on some things, the latest and some other stuff. Maybe some of your big questions you're getting more recently, any answers to questions that are being asked, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Well, first of all, by now I'm sure you all know that summer is going to be either online or remote teaching only. We made that announcement, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago or so. There is a process for getting your course kind of uniquely approved, one time only, to be taught by way of remote teaching for the summer. So there's a form and a check sheet you need to fill out, and then you need to work with my office, online and summer academic programs, and my assistant director, Terrence Amontano, toward that end. So he has approved about 53 courses right now in the past 10 days, give or take a bit. He's still got a handful left, but if you are intending on teaching your course by way of remote teaching, or kind of, I'm hesitant to call it online, but kind of online this summer, that's the only way it could happen if it's not already approved for distance delivery. And then also when it comes to fall, obviously no decision has been made on what's going to happen in fall. Universities all around the country and all around the world are trying to figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to be able to go back to face-to-face instruction? Is it going to be just what we're doing right now in the summer? I mean, who knows? But I would just suggest it couldn't hurt for whatever classes you're slated to teach in the fall. I mean, you might want to start looking at those to see if there are ways that they could be taught by way of tools such as Zoom, WebEx, something else. Or if you're already thinking about possibly taking one or more of those fully online, permanently online, then now might be a good time to start with the actual curriculum modification process. You've certainly got nothing to lose by going down that road and offering an additional delivery mode for one or more courses. So just something to think about.
I have a quick question on that one.
Yeah.
If I know there was some talk about, like, if we had a creative course that we thought we might want to offer, we could propose it. I just didn't, I've been so busy with so much other stuff. Yeah. But I have one course that I'd be interested in offering online. But was there a call for maybe courses as well that could be offered online that were new courses?
For the summer, yes, because we've had, and we continue to have, unfortunately, a steady trickle of courses that are being canceled. They might just simply be courses that aren't conducive to being taught online, chemistry labs, things like that. I mean, it's technically possible, but it's very challenging, of course. So in many instances, faculty have just said, you know what, I love teaching this course. I'm looking forward to teaching it again, but it's just not going to work in some sort of remote teaching or online format this time around. So because of that, we have worked with each of the colleges to see if they want to propose some new courses. And this is typically far, far beyond the point where we would accept any new courses for summer, but these are unprecedented times, so we're doing that. There's not going to be a one-to-one ratio of courses getting cut and courses being added, but there may be a need to add some courses, maybe courses that were already approved for distance delivery and you thought about offering them, you just didn't get around to it for whatever reason. Now might be a good time to do that. So we've already had additional VGP courses added, general education courses, and several others like that as well. Linchpin courses for different programs, those kind of things. So if you're on the fence about that, I would say work with your associate deans and could probably consider it.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, in your thoughts on just creative new courses and stuff like that? Any?
Yeah, it's worth a shot, certainly. Each college has, well, in many cases, many departments, not just colleges, have topics courses that are specifically designed for that end. So whatever topics class you might already have in your department, Steve, or in anyone else's department, I mean, it might be worth exploring. Now, a topics class would still need to be approved for distance delivery. So if you just want a one-time only thing, again, that would be that streamlined process through my office that does not involve the curriculum modification process. But if you want to do it permanently, then you'd have to do the
Okay,
regular
gotcha.
process for that.
I'd be interested in maybe trying something out to see, because I have an area that I'm particularly interested in. I've always thought about what it'd be like to do a class in that area.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised what will and won't work for a topics course. There have been plenty of times where I have been completely wrong on topics courses. Like someone proposes they're going to offer a course on, I don't know, werewolves or something for the summer. And my first thought is, okay, good luck getting any students for that. And guess what? The course fills up. So what do I know?
Yeah. All right. Well, I might do that if I've got enough time to carve out to describe such a course.
Sure.
One. Do we have? This is an odd question. Do we have any courses at the university on remote working and teaming?
To my knowledge, we don't. I mean, we have courses on remote teaching, of course, but in terms of learning remotely, working remotely, that kind of thing, not to my knowledge. So that might be a good area to expand on. We're actually trying to come up with some new certificates or concentrations or cognates where you would start them in the summer, and then maybe by the end of the fall semester, you would be done. So in a 5-month block of time, you go from 0
I got
to,
some ideas there too. Okay.
yeah, so it's certainly worth exploring.
So any other updates? Any the president is and the provost are holding a open forum town hall tonight.
Yep.
And that's on the website. I think it's easy. Just go to bgsu.edu and find it, I think.
Right, and I'll be definitely sitting in on that. I mean, that's about it for now, really. I mean, each day is kind of a blur as we kind of power through our courses and make sure our students are primed for success. So
how are you seeing? There's a lot of thoughts around times like this can increase enrollment as opposed to decrease enrollment. There's different opinions on economy and attendance. What are you seeing, and what's your general opinion on where enrollment might go? What are some scenarios that you are seeing, particularly from your vantage?
Right. Well, it's a good question. Each college is kind of crafting some different options that are kind of unique to the pandemic. I know our College of Health and Human Services is moving forward with some brand new courses focusing on pandemics, COVID-19, things like that. I believe they're going to try to wrap them up as either a grad certificate, a formal one that they can go through the process to make that happen, or some sort of informal undergrad concentration of courses or something. So there's a lot of opportunity there in these challenging times. I know that sounds terrible to say that there's opportunity during the pandemic. I don't really mean for it to come out that way. But there are cases where, yeah, enrollment could be very strong in certain areas that were considered kind of, I don't know, less enticing just prior to this. So for example, we took a suspended grad certificate that had consistently low enrollment. It was K through 12 online teaching grad certificate. And we really weren't able to do much with it for several years. But now, I mean, working with our Dean for Education and Human Development, we thought, all right, now might be a good time to dust it off and breathe some new life into it and see what happens. So Julie Matuga, Pat Pauken, and others in that college are going to roll it out with the summer 2 session and have it go throughout the fall semester and see what happens.
Cool.
So yes, there's some opportunities.
And maybe one last question, then we'll all do a little check-in, and that is,
yeah.
This is, I'm not sure how to ask this. So I'll try to be. So I'm curious, what's the most what the word is, unsuspected or surprising thing that you think that you've learned that to do with online classes that is not common? And what's the most surprising, uncommon thing to avoid doing? Do you have anything that you've learned, like, man, I never thought you got to do this, and man, make sure you don't do that? Have you had any of that, those surprises?
Yes, but I would say they're not necessarily related to the pandemic. For me, it always comes down to audience. Who is your audience? Who are your students? So if they are traditionally aged students taking a class that was face-to-face but now is offered by way of synchronous video, remote learning, something like that, there's certainly a bunch of different things you could do to make it a lively, engaging, active class. But the same is true if you have an audience exclusively of working adults as well too. So for example, I think I mentioned with our eCampus affiliated programs, these are working adults that might live 3 time zones away. They might work different shifts. They might be just incapable of meeting at structured times due to their own work-life balance. So, you know, if you know your audience ahead of time, I would craft your course specifically for that audience in terms of delivery mode, tools, everything else, and that is so critically important when you're teaching online.
Cool. Is there any big, surprising, or blind spot things that don't do this or be careful? You never thought of it before, but now it's like those unintended consequences kinds of things, like, you know, with online learning that, you know, that you
Sure.
didn't think about before, but it's really important.
Sure. Yeah. For me, it's always a question of access related issues. So particularly during the pandemic. So we have a terrific set of institutionally supported tools and platforms to support face-to-face, hybrid, and online classes and programs here at BGSU. However, not knowing what level of access your students might have during the pandemic makes using some of these kind of questionable. So for example, using Respondus lockdown browser for traditionally aged students in face-to-face or hybrid classes, or even online classes, during a regular semester might be fine. Using it during the pandemic, I don't know, maybe not. It's hard to say. I know I kind of assume all of our students have equal access, but they don't. Or even if they have great hardware, they might be living with their parents during the pandemic, and the broadband might be minimal at best. So using a tool like that, even if the tool is functionally very feature rich, just might not make sense because you might be excluding broad groups of your own students in the process of doing that. Like one example right here I could think of is going back to Respondus. Respondus lockdown browser. So if you have a Windows-based laptop or a MacBook Pro, you know, a Mac, something like that, that's great. You'll probably be okay. Again, assuming you have reliable broadband or reliable Wi-Fi wherever you are. But think about the typical setup many of our students might actually have instead. So I'm thinking about my nephew in Michigan. He's a teenager. He has a desktop Windows 10 based system that he built himself as kind of a gaming rig, if that makes any sense. And then he has his iPhone. And that's it. So yes, he could do his homework on his computer, that's fine, but his desktop computer and the monitor he uses, he does not have any sort of webcam at all. He never bought one. It's almost impossible to buy one on Amazon right now or anywhere else in the pandemic. They're all sold out everywhere where the price is incredibly jacked up. So all he has is his headset with a little boom mic and his desktop computer and his iPhone. Respondus Lockdown Browser requires a webcam. It is not compatible with an iPhone or an Android phone, as far as I know, nor is it compatible with, say, Chromebooks. And the company, Respondus, has already said they have no intention of making a version of their client for Chromebooks or anything like that. So using an everyday institutionally supported tool in that type of environment, even if you would normally do it, honestly might not make the most sense. And you might want to rethink it and try and get to those same learning objectives by a different means.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm surprised people, one of the things I'm surprised by, and we'll jump in, is sometimes I think as faculty, at least me, I want to do everything perfect. I want to close, I want to make sure everything is there, every I is dotted, T is crossed, and the learning is locked down, and there's no potential chance for this or that. And I've learned to kind of back off and say, what's the real objective here? Learning is the objective. I can't verify all of it, but how do I maintain a reasonable level of integrity to a solid level of integrity? Not perfect integrity, but a good level. And I do that through different techniques and maybe relax a little bit and not get so stressed out that everything's not perfect, So that's kind of how I handle that. So, well, Paul, I'm really grateful that you keep coming and seeing you here and so forth. So why don't we all check in and just talk about what are we learning? Where are we at? What question do we have that would be helpful to you today? Paul, is there, and maybe we'll circle back around to you and see if there's anything we can help you with, if there's anything you would like some ideas on or anything like that. So
sure.
Why don't we, Salim, are you willing to jump in and say hi? Do you need a minute? You're on mute. I can unmute you. Can I unmute you?
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate that, Steve. Yeah, I have actually, there is a variety of things here we can talk about. One thing I know Paul mentioned at one time, actually probably even you, Steve, you mentioned the idea of the labs in particular, very problematic. How to teach people with, they have a lab component in the class. As I happen to be in architecture, as you know, architecture is studio-based, means professors have to go around and check each student and talk to them face-to-face, and probably sketch for them and so on and so forth. Now we're losing this big time. We try to do our best. Definitely architecture is the epitome of this problem because we all have design studios and so on. Though eventually we probably, I would say from my understanding, my colleagues and I try to do our best to get going. And we have this sharing of files, PDFs and drawings and so on and so forth. But it's extremely short of being able to mark and do, and I know there is marking and engaging between the professor and the student even online, but it's still limited. So, though the real question here is not, but I'm going to try to take advantage of this forum to see where you're coming from. But though the real dialogue, or to complement the dialogue, this need to be part of our department, and we sort of getting started on it. So I'm talking to Paul in particular because where he's positioned and what he does in the university. I am sure probably Paul and anybody else can chime in, hear about this. Is the university aware, beside that, the problem of education in general online, the problem of labs and studios online? And if they have any understanding about the depth of the problem and what, is there any idea to talk or a plan to attack there?
Yes, labs are, of course, probably the most challenging element of any sort of distance education at all, outside of the pandemic. We do have some, very few, but we do have some online lab-based natural science general education courses. And those were very challenging to get up and moving in an appropriate format that the state recognizes as still being meeting the learning objectives for general education. But that did take quite a while to do. If your department is looking to get some of their labs fully online beyond simply, remote teaching temporarily during the pandemic, I'd be, of course, happy to work with anyone in your department or anyone in the college for that matter, see what we can come up with. There's not going to be a perfect solution, kind of what Steve was getting at, but there might be something that is I hate to say good enough, but reasonable, a good faith effort. And maybe that's the solution we need to shoot for instead of perfect.
Yeah, well, I think, I'm not really faulting anybody because we're all hit and we have to get down and running, all of us. I'm cognizant of the fact that the department itself need to have, all departments, especially the departments which have this lab component, studio component in their curriculum, need to get going and start the dialogue and so on and so forth. And actually, probably the departments have to be probably the instigators of looking into this and push it into the upper level, administration, yourself, and so on and so forth, with that sense. But it looks to me that at least in what I read you saying, you are cognizant of the problem, but there is no real thought about it yet and how to solve it and move it forward.
Yes, in terms of a widespread permanent solution, we're certainly not there yet. And I think just about any institution would be in the same boat as us. For something temporary for the pandemic, we have, for example, to my knowledge, 9 lab-based natural science classes, kind of online, remote teaching for the summer. And I know natural science is not the same as architecture, but I'm just saying these are lab-based courses where the faculty in question were trying to figure out something, probably by way of Zoom or WebEx or something similar, to make it work, at least for the summer. So it's one thing to figure out a temporary kind of Band-Aid solution. And I'm glad that many of us are working toward that end. But for something more permanent, that certainly would require a little more direct involvement. It would be a lot more challenging. But we're absolutely willing to go down that road with you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep.
You're muted, Steve.
I was saying, Fernanda, do you want to check in? And I'm sorry.
Yes, I can check in.
Sure.
I really don't have anything new. I've just been continuing with the courses, some of the things that I've been doing, such as the WebEx meetings. Yeah, not a whole lot new.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's good to see you. And Jen, how about you? How's it going from your perspective? Any other updates? Because you were here on Tuesday and had a really good session, on virtual teams and things like that. Anything you want to check in with?
We did. Good morning, everyone. I think Steve was, when I was just checking, or when I just was hopping on, Steve was talking about our DODC program. And I keep trying to, also tell my my cohort mates about this, and I haven't seen anybody jump on yet. So maybe they're just relying on me to bring some information and Dr. Katie and Carol. So, but there's, I thought our discussion, so I think Teo, you recorded it, right? The Tuesday session, that's okay. If there's people that are interested more in virtual teams, virtual learning, virtual office type of things, it was kind of a happy accident, I think, that we started talking down that path, but it was a really good session. And so I appreciate being able to be a part of this. The one question I did have is, are you okay with us inviting others to this or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the guy I was referring to, that I was telling you about, that's interested in the DODC program at OU, he actually teaches classes and he's going through some of the same struggles, and they don't have anything like this at their campus. And so before I invited him and shared the invitation, I just wanted to make sure that you're okay with me doing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been sending it out to anybody and everybody. So he can send it out to faculty across his campus.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add real quick the conversation or some of the resources that we identified in the session on Tuesday are in the tiny URL. I'm going to put it in the chat here again for a second. One of the resource entries toward the bottom is labeled Virtual Teams and has the article and the free PDF of one of the books that Russ Millett and John Wagner offered to us. So the links are all there for you guys to check out.
And Jen, you mentioned some resources from your learning design course that you've taken?
Yeah, I sent them to Teo. I don't know, Teo, did you get that one document? And I don't know if you got that uploaded to the tiny URL either, but I sent you the link probably about maybe a week ago or so. I can resend it. I know you're getting bombarded. So
if I don't find it right now, yeah, I think I saw one from you. I've not uploaded it yet. I'll do that right now.
I just want to get that document and the stuff that I was hoping to get the stuff from her class. Is it Troutman?
Troutman, yeah, Donna Troutman.
She has a lot of really good resources. So I was wondering if you, on that link that you have in the chat, it allows you to edit. You could just go in there and say, here are some resources from Dr. Troutman's learning design course that I found really helpful, and then just give a series of links to us. That would be great if you don't mind doing that.
Yep, I gave him the one that's probably the biggest one that we really, it's only a 7-week class, so that one was the one that had all of the top apps, and it actually has a little description beside him that says this is what this app does, and I thought it was great. So yeah, that's it. Teo, you have it.
It's in the chat.
Toptoolsforlearning.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Toptoolsforlearning.com. That's a good one. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay. I'm going to be sharing that with faculty. I haven't put that out.
Okay. Great. Yeah, it's actually funny because when I started my master's degree at BG 30 years ago, she was one of my first professors. And so having her again, it was kind of like melancholy, So hey, a side question that I do have for Paul. So I've been talking also about this in a lot of my different, if you want to say cohorts and comms that I do with other people. And I had an individual, not at BG, but at another campus, that her son is getting it paid through the GI Bill, but they said because the course was online, they were only going to be paying 50%. So I didn't know if, I know that when I was signing up and registering for classes, there was ones that said online only, there was ones that said, in person kind of in class. And I didn't know if you had heard anything about that or if you could shed any insight. Again, it's not a BG thing, but I just, when you were talking about it earlier, I was just curious about that.
Because we have military folks that are probably facing the same issue.
Yeah, and they're saying that because the class is online, they only pay 50% online, versus if it's a class, I believe, like we're taking through our classes that have the residency, is there a differentiation? And that might be something to consider when we're talking from a military perspective that I've never been aware of, just because I don't have a military family, but I just was curious on what tweaks are happening in order for those folks to be able to actually get their full amounts.
Sure, it's a great question. I'm not qualified to answer that. Barb Henry, our Assistant Vice Provost for Non-Traditional and Military Student Services, would really be more attuned to those type of nuanced questions regarding military assistance than I would be. I can say, however, in all of our fully online programs, for example, our eCampus affiliated ones, we have a whole bunch of active duty military personnel, and I'm sure a fair amount of veterans too, but we have active duty Air Force all around the world enrolled in our undergraduate degree completion programs and many of our graduate programs. And that has not changed, nor will that change. If anything, our numbers are going up in eCampus. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or what. So there may well be some sort of tuition assistance issues associated with the pandemic. I'm not certain, but if it would help, we can maybe get Barb to come to one of these sessions in the coming weeks and see what she thinks, or it just might be something
Yeah.
you might want to run by her. Again, her name is Barb Henry.
I was just curious, and again, it's just one of those things that we were just having a conversation about this group, and I said something, and she had noted that. And I do, on my one elective class that I'm taking right now, I have one person who is active military right now, and that is a little bit of a, I mean, we're very much adapting to his schedule when we're scheduling our small groups and things like that.
Sure.
But that is definitely something, because he's on a different time zone,
Oh, yeah.
to take into consideration, as well as you were talking about. It's not just the working professional, but it's also the military. And, he may get called out at any time. And so, our group has been wonderful and adapting very well, but that is a consideration for future as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Carol, you want to say hi?
Hi. On a personal level, Paul, thank you for that link to the timeline. It has been very, very useful.
Oh, Tiki
Paul
Talk.
gave-
Yeah, it's a great
yeah.
platform.
Paul gave me an interactive application to create timelines. One of the meetings you weren't at, Steve.
I think I was there actually for that one. The Tiki Talk, right? Or
Yeah.
something?
Tiki Talkie, yeah. Yeah, it's been around
Yeah.
for years. You could create web-based timelines, a good way to have interactive group assignments. You could
That's really cool.
Yeah, roll a nice rubric around it. It's terrific.
Yeah, it's another one of those that you need to figure out how to use the technology, but it is feature rich. So thank you. Jen, to your comment, it reminded me of when I was in the corporate world and fought pretty unsuccessfully for online courses to be given tuition reimbursement at the corporate level. And thinking back to you yesterday, when you said in one day it changed from we will not do online at home work to we will all do online work. I wonder if that's still there too, which is a huge opportunity for people who are now going to be working online, that they could take online courses and get tuition exemption if corporations would accept that.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, so when I was at Whirlpool 30 years ago, right, is when University of Phoenix kind of started coming as the only group that was online. And there may have been others, but I had educational reimbursement at the time, and our policy was like, no way, it's not as good as in-class training with lectures and small groups and et cetera. And at least in the corporations that I've been in, it's kind of come full circle where now if you want to go for an online degree, you definitely can do it. So like the eCampus, I'm sure there's people at Marathon that are in the different programs now. So it is different, but we're very, very traditional culture. And we still have the quote unquote butts and seats mentality of even for our learning. And so we're trying to get more up to speed with doing a little bit more on remote learning. We do it a lot for the on-the-job training. So a lot of our folks that are out in the field, like working on pipelines and things like that, they'll have their iPhones, iPads, where they have their one-stop shop, quick minute learning, if you want to say. So we're getting more advanced that way. But when we actually get into some of our leadership training and things like that, we're still very much butts and seats. Opportunity galore, huh?
Yeah, I think what struck me about this is Paul's answer. We have programs to teach people how to teach, but we don't have programs that teach people how to work. And there's this huge need and history of that, but instructional designers are coming out of the woodwork saying, have said many times, Paul, repurposing face-to-face to online is not a no-brainer. It's got nuances in it that really need some kind of understand what you're doing for the purpose. So I'm complete.
Cool, thanks. Teo, you want to check in?
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me has been a reminder that very much many of us with butts in our chairs participating in Zoom meetings are having a very similar experience to if we were going to a conference setting and never left the meeting room that we're in with the same presenter and going for like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours straight. And I was sort of surprised at myself because when I've designed conference engagements, I'm very cognizant and intentional about, breaks and, okay, next session, 10-minute break. And then before the next session, let's all jump up and make our silliest face and our funniest pose, or just getting people moving, where my current experience, and I suggest many of yours, is the same chair in the same room with the same screen set up. So I had some really wonderful conversations around intentionally setting up a B site to work in, and maybe hopefully soon enough in Northwest Ohio that might be sitting with just a laptop, which yes has some limitations versus my multi-screen setup, but just sitting with the laptop on the back porch. Or one of the things that I thought was cool that came out of one conversation, to have intentional sessions where you give people a heads up and say, okay, our next half-hour engagement is on mobile devices only, and if you can go outside, if you can't go outside, go to your couch or lay on your floor and do yoga, and really take people out of this everybody on the screen kind of interaction, and have intentional pointed pieces. Maybe it's just a half hour and that's plenty sufficient, where you make them go outside or make them do something else while listening to a presentation. And sort of the things that typically I think we would have discouraged in this kind of format, to say, no, we want your video on, we want you engaged, to offer opportunities to very specifically not do that.
That's cool. Thanks, Teo. So I want to go ahead, Celine, you going to say something?
Yeah, I want to comment on what Theo just said or related to him. Again, we are new to this and we're hit and we need to take care of students and we're trying our best. But I want to talk in terms of example. I have 8:30 class, 32 students, and actually I start discovering that students just show up and they do not, they stop their video. They don't want to show their video. So I have only names and things of this nature. Then I realized that doesn't work because maybe not motivated, maybe they don't want to be exposed. It is a new environment for them. So then I asked, hey, please, everybody turn on the video. And a lot of them did, but some not. The next time I said, everybody has to do the video, guys. And I tried to make it clear, look, the video is not for me. The video went for everybody else, for your colleagues and so on. So what I'm trying to say here, actually, is Paul mentioned, and maybe we all think, maybe we are not sure what's going to happen for next fall. So if that is the case, maybe, and I think Paul even mentioned, guys, you maybe want to set yourself up that this might go, which is fine as individuals. But it looks to me we need some sort of modality, some sort of understanding about this an hour online, for example, how it's going to go. As you said, maybe you have a break, okay? Maybe, hey, you give some instruction early on to students, this, and that. So it looks like it's left to us, and I am not saying it in a negative way by any means, by the way it is, it's left to us as faculty and as instructors to do our best this semester. But what we are doing this semester is exception. If we're going to continue with it in next fall, we would better have some sort of guidelines, some sort of a study, some sort of things coming on board for all of us, on the department level, on the university level, something of this nature. Otherwise, we're losing students. This is, by the way, it has implication on the idea of students coming to us or not. The student dropping from our majors or not. And this is extremely important for the university. We all know that. So I think I'm just raising my voice for something. If we don't take care of it, it's left to the faculty members to do it, and faculty members try to do their best, but I am not sure I have all the wisdom in the world to do the best in my class. So I want to capitalize on 7 of you and the 700 in the university. That's my point.
So Salim, you know, I'm starting to have, this is weird. I'm starting to get kind of giddy. And when I listen to you talking about some of the fun experimental ways to maybe really mix it up on the students and keep them on their toes in a positive way. And I don't know at what point this is actually novel or cool or something the faculty would be interested in. But as I'm listening to you talk about 8:30, so I have an idea. But I'll come to that idea in just a second. So let me preface that by saying this past weekend, I taught something that I don't think anybody has ever done. I'd like to know who in the United States, a faculty member who's done it this past weekend. Anywhere in the United States or the world for that matter. Some people may have. I taught our residency online in which our students, 15 of them in our master's program, we started at 6 o'clock on Friday, went to 10 p.m. We went from 8 to 5 on Saturday and 9 to 3 on Sunday.
Okay.
On Zoom.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody on the planet has done that before. So I've documented the whole thing, so I'm going to try to tell the story. And in that, there was not a dull moment. The students were facilitating interactive experiences. I was facilitating. We had a client come in from Junior Achievement, and the students worked in consulting teams competing to propose a strategic planning solution for Junior Achievement, working with 4 people from Junior Achievement that came in and worked with the student teams all throughout the whole time. And they were either in small groups or in the whole working on solutions, developing stuff, solving problems. And there was not 1 minute of lecture the entire time. We had many teachable moments, maybe like talking a little bit about a technique or a tool or a term or answering a question, but there was no planned, like per se, lecture that I gave the entire time. So I think there might be, so I go to yours, and I start thinking, how do we create an experience for your students? Like, for example, that it creates natural consequences for them to come in, be engaged, and show up. If they don't, right? If they don't do it, there's some natural consequences like gravity, but you create them. So for example, what if you gave them a problem that they have to solve and that they're in a small group of 3 or maybe 4 so that they can have room for 1 person or 5 so they can have room for 1 or 2 people not to really do their part, because you'll have people that just don't show up or don't do work. But maybe it's 3, you know, or something like that, or 4. So, and you give them a problem and it's due immediately after your session that you do in the morning at 8:30. It must be turned in by, let's say, 9:30, like 10. Maybe they got a half hour after, an hour after, but they have to turn in their solution individually that their group came up with, turn in the solution and give their own personal reflection on that solution in terms of what it meant to them and what they contributed to that solution, how they helped that solution happen. And they have to do it. It's like, maybe it's, you know, like they create the solution during the time with you, share it with you, you critique it, give them feedback and help them get to the right answer, so that when they're done with the session, they can turn right around and turn it in. Otherwise, they can get it, not show up, but they have to go figure it out on their own. So I don't know, you know, and so maybe it's, if you show up, you get put into a team, and when you get into the team, you still have to you can turn in the solution that we 3 came up with in my team, but I have to add, what did I contribute to the solution, and what did I learn from the solution in terms of my own personal learning? Maybe a couple paragraphs on that, along with the solution that I came up with 3 other people. But if I don't show up, I don't get the benefit of that. Now, the flip side is, what about those that don't have access and have all those other challenges? How do you do that? So maybe you do it in a way that the recording from the session is available, and you give people until, let's say, 3 o'clock or that evening to turn it in, so people can at least watch it that couldn't. But those that show up, you can make a case, hey, you'll get it all done. I don't know, so I'll stop there, but I'm just kind of getting giddy thinking about how you can maybe turn this into something, and say, hey, if you show up, you have to turn your video on unless you don't have it, and this is why, to come play the game, to come play today with us, that kind of thing. What do you think? Is it?
If I may just, let me ask, the class you're talking about is undergraduate or a graduate class?
Graduate.
Okay. I'm telling you, I taught online before these days we are in, not intensively online. I mean, I just use basically a Canvas, and I taught a graduate class. So the people who were in my class, obviously, age-wise, they're a little bit more mature. Some of them, actually, a lot of them are actually workers. Yeah, they have families. I hardly find a lot, I mean, I found some difficulties, but it was not as deep. See, undergraduate students, completely different ball game. But that does not mean what you just said does not apply to them. I think it does, from my perspective. I think the value of what you just explained to us, Steve, your paradigm, your experience, this is the kind of thing we probably would good to bring on board for us to have some common understanding about, we have a problem, but this problem could be looked at in different ways. So the dialogue is the thing I'm looking for. Essentially, if we have that dialogue and this dialogue is persistent through, say, I don't know, Paul office, your office, me, and so on, then we carry things forward. I think from my perspective, the university, because they care very much about enrollment, as we all know, and we care about that, obviously, this is extremely important aspect, and I hope we will look at it, and the administration look at it more seriously than just leave it to us just to get things going. I know we will get things going, but we need to get things going in the best way we can.
So Salim, that's really cool. And I remember last time when I was sharing something about discussion boards, you said, Steve, could you just walk us through those steps? You were asking, like, so I can walk you through the practical steps. And I'm going to do that. I haven't had a chance to organize my stuff to do that. But I had an idea, going back to what you were saying. I'm curious what you think. And this is, Paul, for you to think about. What if we did an initiative that is called highly engaging online lab development, or something that's about creating highly engaging experiences using in online environments. And we get faculty who volunteer to be a part of the development of these tools, and we study it while we're doing it. So we're actually like putting to work. And so Salim said, I'm in. So we get 20 people or 10 people or whatever, and we do some stuff where we say, okay, let's try this little interactive things with undergraduates, where we try this little we call, the problem solving, and we take 5 of them and we offer this experience of the classes. And then the other class, they offer, but they don't hold the sessions. They just give the problem. And we see what shows up on the other side of it, and do something like to see what we learn from it. And then we share it. But we begin to start prototyping and innovating these highly engaging interventions that we can showcase for faculty. What do you think about that, Salim?
Well, I think probably that's one way to go about it. You have a nucleus group, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know. And to establish actually what is actually the challenges and what ways we can really go about through the experiences of different people, and maybe some directions. I don't think we can give nitty-gritty. We give some paradigms and some ways. Basically, some sort of ways to do things and situations where you do those things. Something of this nature. It's just like anything small research problem we all familiar with. It's nothing. I see your proposition is sound, frankly.
Yeah, because I think that might. I don't know, Paul, if there's something there, but there might be something where we take an intentional approach to experiment and develop in kind of more quickly, things that aren't being done to help people address these issues. Because Celine, you bring up some really great design challenges, the way I think about it. It's like, how do we design to that? And what might work? So anyway, we're getting close to the end of the hour. So that's where I'm getting giddy. So I think there's all kinds of really cool stuff that we might be able to do. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, you could certainly approach this from a design thinking perspective, and there'd be a whole lot of opportunity, if not fun, in tackling that. I think that would be great. That being said, I realize we're discussing this in the middle of a pandemic, but to me, my mind immediately jumps towards, wow, this would be a great topic for a conference presentation at a teaching and learning conference or any other conference that's discipline specific, where they have a teaching and learning track in there as well too. So, there could be some practical, useful mileage we get out of this, like actually for the classes, but then also it could lead to a nice line on someone's vita, or make it several authors or something. So a whole lot of opportunity and possibilities.
Yeah. Cool. So let's check out. What do you all want to check out? Fernanda, you want to check out?
Sure, I can check out. Steve, I really like your idea about setting up a problem, and that will, I think, attract the students to come to the class, especially if they know that they're going to be graded, right? And they have to interact together during that meeting to try to solve the problem. And then individually they respond in terms of the strategies they used, or maybe what they did individually to contribute to solving the problem. So I think this would be a really great way to engage them during that virtual meeting. And these are some of the things that we generally do in the classroom, but because we're now in a setting that some of us, are not so familiar with, we don't think about using that type of a design, but I think that would work really well.
I think it'd be curious. I think it would be interesting to see how they do. I do some of that with some of my classes now already, but I noticed that when there's the way it comes out of is when I've noticed when students have issues, they show up. So you got to create issues, right? You got to create a problem.
Right.
I got to get this done, and I don't know how to get it done. You got to create and say, okay,
right.
Here's your lifeline. Come here, and then all of a sudden they're there, right?
Right. Right.
But they don't show up if everything's going smoothly.
No, they don't. They don't send emails. They don't
No,
show up.
nothing.
So you know if there's something wrong because they contact you.
So you got to create positive problems, so to speak. So, Jen, you want to check out?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my little note in the chat, but I said, do you need a doctorate student? Because I don't have a dissertation yet. So this is all kind of
I mean, if you wanted, hey, Jen, if you wanted to do a dissertation on something like this, I would be all over it. We could do that together, and we could propose something, and we could,
So you'd be my advisor?
Yeah. And then
you guys are getting this recorded, right?
Yeah, and we can ask Paul to parcel a little bit out of his budget for to pay some of your executive fees to cover it. I'm kidding, Paul.
Can you?
I'm not.
Not in this day and time.
Oh, I know. I'm all good. The one thing, so yes, I would be extraordinarily interested. So if there's something that I can do to help with that, I'm extraordinarily interested. That's part of why on the Tuesday call that it was just rolling from there. And so my head's been spinning, and So yes, I would be happy to help. The second thing is, I think it'd be really cool to do it even at the different levels of the education, because I have a junior in college right now that's online, and she goes to Penn State, and I see exactly what you're talking about with her, that she'll go in and they'll take attendance in the class, so she puts her name out there, and I'm like, well, and then she comes down and gets a snack, and I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Aren't you paying attention? So it's been quite a case study, just a microcosm of what you all are talking about. And so I've been actually forcing her to be online and be on video, and she goes, but my hair's not all good and things. So, but I tell her that she's taking key learnings away from herself when she's not actively engaged. And so anyway, that's my checkout. Thank you all I appreciate very much you allowing me to be a part of the discussion. Stay well.
I realize we're getting close to 12. So anybody else want to check out before we go?
So we still have one more meeting, I guess, this,
Yeah, I think,
this forum.
yeah, I'm going to try to do a few more actually through the summer. I'm going to try to keep it going. I just don't know how frequent, maybe once a week over the summer. Do you think, would you be, not that you're required to come, but do you think that would be helpful if there was once a week and you could pop in when it was convenient for you?
I think I would. I am not sure I'm going to do every week myself,
Right.
But I think, yeah, especially if there is some initiatives like these things we're talking about, if there is some issue, big issue that is common and cross-cutting in the sense of everybody feels
Right.
appropriate, then we attract people, into that. So
Okay.
I don't know if we're going to forum or what have you. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll do something. So yeah, so I'll send something out and we'll definitely meet next week for sure, Celine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So my checkout is that this is very exciting on multiple levels. And isn't it interesting that when this started, Teo told us that there were over 150 people who signed up in the beginning, and the uptake and the need was enormous, and people got very specific help in that WebEx versus Zoom. And now the last 2 weeks have been very deep in how you actually use it to design courses. And for me, the observation that the uptake has been more rapid in 6 weeks. And Steve, you generated that than in 30 years. And I find this absolutely fascinating, and watching Jen blossom with interest in this says, and your excitement, there's something really deep about what's happened in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a subset. But wow. And Salim, you generated that with your question, and it's always the question that is important, not the answers. And this reinforces my understanding of that in 2 minutes. So,
a lot of fun. So
I just
bright
want to
people
say
are
thank
here.
you to Fernanda for always being here and your energy and presence. It's kind of cool to have been logging on at 10:55 and whoop, oh, there's Fernanda. Good morning. How are you? So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fernando, you always add a practical component. And what I would really love is if we had a small call like this, if you would tell us what you've learned and how you've actually applied it between the first time you came, because you were one of those people who actually already was aware and using it, but you tell us that you get something out of it. So I think that's another research component that could come into this. What was the trajectory?
Yeah. Right. Well, that's super. Well, again, it's good seeing everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Know that I'm always here. I'm looking forward to getting to spend time with you in person when we get back together. So we've gotten to know each other online. So now I have new friends I get a chance to see this coming year as we get back together, which would be very nice. So anybody have anything else before we say goodbye? Nope. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I'll see you all
Thank
later.
you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.